a lad. Everybody here is younger than me and they're just massively more successful. This is not good for my egos at all. Web is Kyle lined up, Mr. Samani? Yes, he is.
What's
All
up, Mert?
right. Kyle, long time no see, my friend. How you doing?
What's going on, my man? How are you? How does it feel
Good.
knowing these young founders that made more money than you?
Oh man, it is. I'm doing some soul searching right now, but and then now we have Mr. Kyle Samani. So for the audience, I had Kyle on my podcast on Sunday, so like 2 days ago. So I already asked you basically all these questions I'm going to ask you. So I'll try to keep it somewhat new, but um, obviously, Kyle, you're the chairman of the new treasury company, DAT, ticker Ford. So let's just catch people up here. What is it? What does it do? Why are you doing it?
Yeah. So, hey, everyone. Kyle here from Multicoin. I'm in Washington, D.C. today, meeting with folks in Congress over the next couple days. So I recently became chairman of Forward Industries. Forward Industries is a NASDAQ-listed publicly traded company. The ticker is Ford, Ford. Yes, it's like the car company. And you got to know the management team at Forward Industries over the last few months, and they kind of recognized the opportunity to build the leading Solana digital asset treasury strategy in partnership with the folks at Jump, Galaxy, and myself at Multicoin. So we came together and we raised $1.65 billion over a couple of weeks. We announced that transaction last week. The transaction closed last week. That money is now invested into the company, and the company has been using that to buy some SOL. Um, uh, that we have a lot of plans, obviously beyond that. And yeah, let's talk about some of those, Mert.
All right, so you have plans to deploy some of this. You are in DC as well. I do want to talk about that in a few. And we have people in the chat saying Samani mode, Sailor mode. So a lot of fun stuff there. What are your plans? What are you going to do? What does the future look like for Solana, the Manlets, and Ford?
Look, the future of Solana is honestly the same kind of dream Anatoly had all the way back in 2017, 18. At the time, we called it decentralized Nasdaq. In hindsight, that was a little bit of a backwards facing statement. And I think the idea of decentralized Nasdaq has really evolved into what we now call internet capital markets. And I think internet capital markets is a much grander vision. Obviously, it's more imaginative, or forward thinking, but also I think kind of captures the excitement about the future of what this technology can represent. Obviously, well, what are internet capital markets? I mean, it's the ability to, have one global ledger, 24/7, permissionless, programmable, which all you need is a phone and an internet connection, and you can trade any asset from any piece of software. And that's really it. It's really just bringing the kind of properties of the internet to finance. Finance has, for the last 30 or 40 years of software, been in its own weird little bubble. It operates for limited hours. The rest of the internet obviously does not operate limited hours. And the software systems are regulated and controlled. And it turns out, with the power of cryptography and permissionless consensus, we can bring all of those native traits of the internet to all forms of money movement, financial movement, value movement, and for trading. That's the vision for Solana, and Forward Industries, we're hoping, can do our part to help move that forward. No pun intended, of course. I think the most important thing Forward Industries can do to that effect is to actually kind of like help build the future. About 6 or 7 weeks ago, SEC Chairman Paul Atkins gave a speech titled Project Crypto. And in that, he gave that speech to the 4,000 employees who work at the SEC. And in that speech, he told all the employees, hey, we have to update US securities markets to operate on chain. And if you think about what that's going to entail, that's just like a hard, arduous process. There's a ton of stakeholders. Obviously, the obvious ones, you have NYSE and NASDAQ and those folks, but you also have the DTCC, you have the banks, obviously you have the companies that have their stock out there, the brokerages, etc. So there's intrinsically a lot of complicated heterogeneous stakeholders here. And I kind of realized the opportunity a little while ago of, wait a minute, by coming into this role as chairman of Forward Industries, uh, that we can actually accelerate all of that. And so we're now very much working to make Forward Industries the most on-chain native publicly traded company in the world. I can't talk about specifics yet, but generally speaking, that would entail things both capital market side and operational side of the business. Capital market side, that would mean, we aim to tokenize our stock. Once our stock is tokenized on Solana, then we'd be looking to do things like dividends, equity governance, like shareholder governance, stock splits, fundraising. Prove that you can do all of those things on chain. And then on the operational side, we want to be able to do, core business operations. That means on-chain trading. By the way, we already did that. First thing after we closed the transaction was buy $1 million of Sol natively on-chain using DFlow. We hit a bunch of the prop AMMs, bought 1 million from Sol. I tweeted the transaction ID a few days ago. But beyond buying Sol or selling or whatever, we want to be able to run payroll on chain. We want to be able to pay vendors. We want to be able to run the entirety of the business on Solana and prove to the world that all of those things can be done, so that when companies 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10 show up and choose to do this, there is a proven path that those guys can follow.
Wow, that is, first of all, that is a lot, but that is brilliant marketing. Just leading by example, doing what other people would be doing anyways. Okay, very cool. And yeah, I did see that transaction went through DFlow. Shout out to them, and all the prop AMMs, which are super exciting new development. Well, okay, that's a lot. Hopefully my quants have clipped that. Well, okay, Kyle. So one thing I want to ask here is, you recently actually went on the All In Summit. You gave a talk there, which, by the way, I feel like went a little undernoticed for how big that platform is. I guess the talk is going to come soon, though. And then now you're going to go, or you are in DC, and talk to them. What has it been like talking to like different parts of the world, like the New York, the SF, the DC, about Solana? Like, what do they think of us here, of crypto?
Well, the old picture of like the blind man touching the elephant, and everyone like touches the different parts, and they all think it's a different thing. I
Mm.
kind of think, internet capital markets here is the elephant, um, and everyone looks at it from a different angle. The Wall Street guys are like, it's a trading system, and they generally love it. The folks in DC are like, oh, it's new and scary, and help me understand it, so maybe it's less new and scary. And the folks in SF are like, dude, this is an awesome kind of thing at the intersection of distributed systems, cryptography, consensus, all that stuff. So they all kind of have their own vantage point on it. Um, uh, and look, we're obviously going to help all of them understand and get engaged. I'm here in DC. I have a number of meetings with some pretty prominent folks, and looking to push forward the agenda for crypto in DC. Working on some stuff for the Clarity Act, as well as a handful of other items.
Got it. Man, I would be very disappointed if there weren't like 50 different shitters about an elephant already on the blockchain.
Solana
So,
community, let's see what you got. Come on, guys. Give me an
oh
elephant. Tag
man,
me.
all right, we're going to jail. Okay, well, so um,
Speak for
you
yourself.
um, I was gonna say, okay, so you are going to, well, I mean, you already talked about how you're going to deploy this capital, in some part DeFi, but just run the business through Solana. And then obviously a part of that involves, doing the sailor strategy. Like you obviously came here to win, and so you want to sack Sol. You mentioned something that I thought was particularly interesting, which I stole, by the way, and I tweeted about it, which is M&A of DAT companies and like literally buying potential DATs hypothetically, and then swapping them into Sol or some other asset. Do you or like other strategic M&A? Do you think that's actually how it goes? Like, is that the game here?
I think it's inevitable. I mean, look, I don't know. There's probably at least 20 DATs live today, plus or minus. I would
Mm.
not be surprised if there's 40 or 50 live in the not too distant future. And I don't think the market's going to support that many. And so I think it's inevitable that you're going to see consolidation. And the logical buyer of the DATs is other DATs.
Very interesting. Okay. I forgot to ask, actually, and I just remembered. As you talk to some of these regulatory folks in DC, but maybe even in Europe and other places, there was, I think it's less so now, but especially during January, there was like the common sentiment in a negative connotation, which is that, oh, well, Solana is for memes, right? Obviously, me and you disagree with this, right? There's a lot of other assets and all these different things. But like, what do you say to those people? Like, what are your talking points?
Oh, I mean, I
And
think
like,
it's
assume. By the way, sorry. Assume they're in good faith. Assume they're not like Twitter people where they're like, oh, it's just memes. But like somebody that's just like relatively misinformed that isn't really kept up to date.
yeah, I think it's important to always have a sense of like a history of finance here. And look, the history of finance has always been if people think they can play games in the markets, then they will. This goes back hundreds of years in commodities trades way back in the day. We kind of got the early versions of the stock market in the United States in like late 1800s, early 1900s, and it was going really well for a little while. And then we had the Great Depression, and then after the stock market, after the economy crashed, then the swindlers tried to just use the stock market for gain. And our solution to that was we passed a bunch of laws. We passed the Securities Act of 33. We passed the Exchange Act of 34. We passed the Investment Company Act of 40. And we passed the Commodity Exchange Act. And those kind of four pieces of legislation are still today, 90 years later, like the primary things that undergird rules and regulations in American capitalism and our financial system. And so my point in highlighting that is not to say that finance is bad. It's just you have to understand that like if smart but unethical people will always try and game financial systems for their own benefit, and it's up to some combination of regulatory agencies, self-regulatory agencies, so and that'd be like groups like FINRA in the United States, as well as just good actors like the exchanges, the banks, the brokers themselves, to collectively create a series of rules to encourage healthy market behavior. And that's a cat and mouse game in perpetuity. There's never going to be a logical endpoint to that game where the game is over. Uh, Markets evolve, and so the cat and mouse game will always evolve. Now, with the advent of crypto, it's kind of it's a whole new game, and people are slow to adapt. But like it's fine, everyone will adapt, and we'll have a net better system.
Very cool. Well, okay. I do have. So I want to get to like a nice Solana rally for the manlets, a bull post to end this off. But before I get there, let's maybe get a little lower. We're obviously soul bulls. You're obviously, I would argue you might be a bigger soul bull than me, actually, which is impressive. What do you think, putting that aside, what are the areas of improvement that you see on Solana today? Like you're obviously a VC as well, and you're looking to fund things and fix different things within the network. What are some things that you think need improvement and fast?
I mean, look, the thing that's most on top of my mind right now is tokenizing equity for Forward Industries, our stock, tickers FORD. And, we've obviously, people have been talking about tokenized equities for 10 years, right? Ethereum is 10 years old. People have been talking about that idea for upwards of 10 years. It doesn't still meaningfully exist. Our good friends at Galaxy did tokenize their equity using the superstate on Solana a week or two ago. It's obviously still, the scale is fairly limited at this point. And I think the most important thing that we need to do in the near term as the Solana community and ecosystem is get that off the ground. Obviously, we're working on it on our side to get the equity tokenized, and then we need to work with the rest of the ecosystem partners, meaning the wallets, the market makers, etc., to ensure that we have liquidity trading on chain, and then of course work with the DeFi protocols to ensure that that equity is useful collateral in various DeFi systems. So we need to get that off the ground. And again, everything in finance is inherently requires interacting with all these different stakeholders and getting them all off the ground at about the same time and in some sort of coordinated fashion. And I feel very fortunate to be where I am and to have the relationships that we have so that we can try and kind of coordinate people and get everything off the ground.
Cool. All right. Well, okay. So to cap this off, let's do something fun here. Let's role play, okay? Assume that you're on CNBC and I am a slightly better looking version of Kramer, maybe a slightly worse looking version of Sorkin.
You're
And
certainly more entertaining. You're certainly more entertaining, Mert. I'll give you that.
very good, very good. And so now you're here, and let's say Tom is actually at the backstage. He's just going to follow you on, and you want to make him scared. You want to tell this message to all the boomers, everybody. Why is Solana going to get bigger from here? Why Solana? What's the pitch?
Yeah, I think the pitch is pretty simple. Ethereum was a breakthrough technology at the time it came out in 2015. And look, Solana learned a lot from Ethereum, but they just haven't improved the system fast enough. And today, Ethereum is more than 10 years old. They just celebrated their 10th birthday 2 or 3 months ago. And Ethereum still processes 20 transactions per second, plus or minus. And that's obviously not enough to support global finance, payments, whatever. You don't even need to really think very hard to come to that conclusion. Solana is not where it needs to be, but at least Solana today has a far more credible claim at being able to support 8 billion people around the world participating in these internet capital markets. Obviously, the Genius Bill just passed. We want to encourage stablecoin adoption around the world. If you're going to have a billion people adopt stablecoins, you're going to need to do so on a blockchain that can support that throughput and that scalability. If you think about Project Crypto and securities markets, Chair Atkins wants this to happen. The Solana network today can process like somewhere on the order of 10 billion transactions plus or minus. We're pretty optimistic that 10 billion per day. We're pretty optimistic that number can grow a lot in the coming months and years. But if you look at the number of trades that settle, securities transactions that settle per day across all the major stock exchanges around the world, meaning NYSE, NASDAQ, London, Singapore, etc., less than 10 billion trades per day settle. Now there are limit orders and cancels, and those total more than 10 billion. But of trades that actually settle, it's less than 10 billion per day. So my point in highlighting that is to help people understand that we have a technology now that can at least has a reasonable claim to be able to try and settle not just United States securities volume, but global securities volumes. We have a long way to go, but we're obviously more than 20 TPS. So that I think is the most important thing for people to understand. If you believe in the vision of crypto and you believe in global internet capital markets, you have to have a scalable chain. And Solana today is the most performant scalable chain, and that's proven in leaps and bounds across a lot of metrics.
Great. My quantitative accelerates. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for coming on. Best of luck in DC. Best of luck with Ford. And for people who want to get in touch with Kyle, just make sure to send him a bunch of analogies in long form on Twitter without any context.
The less concise, the better.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Mark. Thanks, everybody. Good to see y'all.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, manlets, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you liked the second but first ever Baldman stream on Solana. There will be a lot more of these, so just put suggestions of who you want to see next. Thank you so much. I'm being cut off like the Grammys or the Oscars. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.